My question is, what's the difference tactically between my short course home racing and the big fleet action that I'm going to go to this winter? How do I get through these scenarios?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question because most of us, if you sail at home and you don't go to a lot of regattas, or even if you do, it could be kind of smaller fleets, which means usually shorter courses. Your home course is probably short. Your winter sailing is probably short. And you get to a regatta and all of a sudden it's a different game. You got to leg it out for a long time. So let's talk through some scenarios. Shoot away.
Yeah, do it. All right. So presume we're going to go to a big course. Yeah, you've been around long enough. It's going to be like this mile and a half beats. And we also now have longer starting lines and presumably more boats. But, as we like to say, when you're starting, right, the only boats that matter are the one above you and the boat below you. So I guess that goes away. But anyway, let's approach the long course up first beat and the starting line when you got a bigger field to play. What do we do?
Yeah, so the bigger field of play, you sort of like, if you're in a really small fleet, you can sort of probably jostle around, find yourself a hole real easy. You could probably tack in at the last moment and get yourself a spot. And you could probably win the boat or the pin if you wanted to. You could fight for just one or two people. Giant fleet, like I've been to regattas where if you're not set up with a minute and a half to a minute to go, there are no holes left. Like you're just like, oh, you go on port tack trying to find your hole, you can't even find it. So big world regattas and J boats or whatever else, I'm really cognizant of if the fleet's setting up early and it's hard to get a big enough line for all those boats for a big fleet long course. So you're usually jammed up a little bit. There's often no holes. So setting up early and protecting a hole becomes the key in a big fleet, long line. And yeah, you're right. Once you get to accelerate, all you care about is the boat above and below you. But man, getting there is very different in a small fleet.
Okay, so when with all this open course ahead of us, is it one of these things where is it less fleet tactics and more left side, right side, middle? How do we approach that first beat?
Yeah, so I think like either way, you're going to have a strategy for the race, and the strategy. Let's just oversimplify it. You're saying let's go left, and maybe there's less current or left shift on the shore. Let's go right. Let's tack shifts up the middle or whatever. So it's either middle, left, or right. And I think when it's a long course, I consider a good start one that I'm on the tack that I want to be on first within 30 seconds of the start, and I have a lane that I can hold for literally minutes. So if I want to go left, I either get a good start and I can hold my lane for a solid couple minutes before I do even bother to look around. Or if I want to go right, I've tacked into a nice lane and I can just hang on forever. Or if it's playing shifts up the middle, I'm on the lifted tack with a clean lane going as fast as I can. In a short course, I'm already thinking about, what's the chess move game at the top mark. I'm already thinking about, even if it's a go left scenario, I'm thinking, how am I going to get out of the left corner? I'm thinking about that, 20 seconds after the start. My head's out thinking about.
You had a great piece that you wrote once about this. There was 2 minutes of just pure concentration, right? So this is the scenario where that 2 minute scenario is key.
So if I drew that on the whiteboard, I call them the critical decision points, right? Mm-hmm. Like in a long course, this is a 10-minute beat, right? So make it simple, 20% into the beat, so that's 2 minutes. This is your 20% into the beat. There's no point in even looking up until then. If you get a lane, you get a good start and you're going left and that's the way you want to go, full 2 minutes before I bother to even look around. Short course, let's move that mark here. 2 minutes, I might already be past the ley line. Like, 20 seconds in, I'm like, all right, am I going all the way left? Or do I, if I'm winning maybe and I can cross everybody, maybe I'm going all the way left. But if I'm not, I better be thinking about my escape plan instantly. And I think this trips people up because they get used to doing this at home, short course. And so they start looking around. And if you're with a really good open fleet sailor that's going fast and that's all they're focusing on, they're going to gain those precious few boat lengths on you make all the difference in a race.
Okay, so off the start, good concentration for 2 minutes. Then look around. Let's drag that weather mark back up to our 8-mile beat here.
So let's go back to 10-minute beat instead of a 2-minute beat, right?
And before we get to sort of a left, right, look, middle, what's your sense on the flow of wind shifts as they're happening on a typical 10-minute beat? I mean, how does that play into the rhythm?
Yeah,
of
so that's
shift?
your up the middle scenario, right? Let's say we're doing tactics. I mean, up the middle, and our strategy is to say we'll do the shifts up the middle. And I would say it's not uncommon to maybe have 2-minute shifts or something. And, you get a feel for that before the race. So, if it's a blustery day, they'll be quicker than that. But, if it's a nice thermal and you're getting 5-degree shifts, even, it's worth taking. They might be in a kind of relatively regular 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something like that. Well, in a 10, 15-minute beat, you can go for 2 minutes, take a shift, go for 2 minutes, take a shift. You might get, a few tacks up the beat. Every 2 minutes you're going to tack. So that's 5 tacks, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I get too many, but you get the idea. But so you get a chance to tack up the middle. If it's a really short course, you might not get that first shift. So for that beat, it might even be considered a persistent shift, even though it's only a 2-minute. If you're getting to the ley line in a minute or two, you might not get that chance to get your shift back. And so with that, I almost think the up the middle tack, unless it's a blustery, shifty day, unless you're sailing on the Charles River or something, that tack up the middle thing kind of doesn't work in a steady, relatively steady, small shift, oscillating breeze. So it kind of takes it off the table.
All right, so let's go. I like the right side. So let's play a right side long beat. What's the considerations?
All right, so we go back to this. Let's, for simplicity, call it a 10-minute beat again, so we can do the numbers math easily. And you want to go right. So as we said before, I get a start. I'm looking for a way. First of all, if it's a long course, the line's long, I better not be starting down here if I want to go right. I'm not going to be able to get out of that side. Doesn't mean I have to win the boat, but I'm trying to start somewhere in the boat end so that I get a way out. And, maybe I have to wait for a few people tack. I don't have to be the first one to go right. But my definition of a good start is, 30 seconds or so. I really want to be on port in a nice fat lane going right. And I will go, put my head down then. And it's kind of like the start. I might be looking around just so I look for that right spot. But once I get established here, I want to go a solid 2 minutes with just going fast. Put my head down and go, 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 go. And then as I get near ley line, I have a choice, right? Am I going to go all the way right and try to one tack it? Or maybe even, maybe you don't get it quite right. You do one little at the end. Or am I going to kind of come shy here? And I think the answer is dependent on how you're doing. If you're winning, you can kind of press it out to the ley line. But if you're not that first few, my favorite thing to do, if I'm not the first one or two, is take these boats that have now tacked more or less on the ley line. And if I choose to go past them, and I'm just a little behind them. So if I choose to go behind them, then I stack up on the ley line. Maybe they tack out again. Maybe I overstood, and I could easily end up in dirty air or overstood. So my favorite thing to do as I get out here is basically go bow to bow with these guys. So the distance I tack away is so that I still have clean air, yet I'm below them, kind of leading them back. Like, I don't go way early, and I don't want to be back here either. I start risking being dirty air. But my favorite thing is for the first boat, my default is I just draw a line from the first boat, wherever they are, and I go bow to bow with them. And if they're further ahead, I'm back here. If they're less far ahead, I'm really close. And that keeps me out of trouble. And then I worry about the end game once I get up there. See how it plays out.
Does that change, I guess, if people set up on the ley line sooner versus later?
Yeah, if they kind of set like maybe shy of the ley line, you're saying, like they're maybe the ley line's here, right? And the peloton, the fleet is, let's just say that's these guys. Let me kind of clean this up so we don't have to overthink it. But if we're looking at the ley line here and they're a little bit early, my default is still to tack with their bow to bow. And the reason for that is they're still ahead of me. And if right's favored, they easily, I could be like duck them and I get on the ley line. And then all one of them has to do is decide to tack out, and I have nowhere else to go. Right. I've given up all my options. If a 10-minute beat, I got 5 minutes on that starboard ley line. And if, 6 minutes into the race, somebody decides to tack me, I'm stuck with that for 4 more minutes. So unless the right is radically favored, I do this. My default is always this lead back thing.
Okay, let's presume we want to go left side now.
Yeah. Well, do you want to now translate that to how I take a right course if it's short course, or do you want to go to left side?
Oh yeah, let's take it short. Shorten that down.
All right, so let's shorten this down to a 2-minute beat, right? So, the weather mark's much closer, line's shorter, probably a smaller fleet, and I would say that my strategy might be, first of all, I kind of don't want to win the boat. Like, I don't want to be the first one out to the right, even though I want to go right, because so quickly after you start, you're thinking about the ley line. And it could well be that, if I'm not winning, then I'm getting really stuck out here. So I do my favorite thing is to start a similar distance away, maybe a quarter of the way from the boat, let a few people tack first, and presumably maybe they had to fight for that boat too. Maybe they've gone a little slow trying so hard to win the boat. And I take a nice lane here. And then if I'm doing really well, I could even go right to the ley line. I don't mind calling the ley line in a short course. But, if I'm a little bit behind, then I can choose what to do. And my default is still the same. Like, this end game here seems very similar, where I want to go bow to bow with the lead boat, whichever it is, right? Tack there, and then worry about the last little bit at the end. The only difference is, you asked them, would I, maybe they're a little shy or they're tight on the ley line. Am I willing to go past them? I am willing to go past them on a shorter course. One less tack. And if I can do this slight overstand, maybe even these guys are blockers for other boats coming. And, I'm not going to be in his dirt for as long. And I'm more likely to be able to do a quick clear out tack without somebody coming and tacking on me. So I play that. We call it, Kenny Legler used to always call this the target overstand. You might be willing to overstand by just the right amount to avoid some kind of clump and mess, which inevitably on a short course is going to happen.
And let's say, this may be sort of a 2.0 scenario, but with that, let's say you're getting close to the top, but you still have some room to play. Would you prefer to set up in a kind of safe leeward, or how strong is a lee bow to give you some time to maybe flush that guy? That could be a blocker.
So let's kind of work our way up the course, kind of not to scale here, right? And I think that a lot of times this last little end game is very similar to the long course and the short course. Even though it's a long course, the boats spread out more. Well, usually the reason it's a long course is a lot of boats. So the top mark might be similarly, especially in a steadier day and people know what they're doing. So there's similar speeds. You can still have a very crowded mark rounding in a big fleet in a long course. So the top mark in a short course can also be really crowded because you have, it's so short, right? Everybody's there, even though there's only 10 boats, all 10 are there. So, let's start off with this 3 boat lane zone. And let's call this a ley line. So once I get on this starboard ley line, once I get near here, let's say I'm the green boat and I've let everybody back. And maybe some people are really close to the ley line and I've chosen this bow even mode, right? And I'm coming here. What I'm really trying to do is I don't want to be here and then tacking in this 3 boat lane zone. I might consider it if it's kind of less dense right here and there's a giant pack behind me. Maybe that extra speed I get by being in clean air will pay off, but it is kind of risky to tack in the 3 boat lane zone. So what I'll typically do is make my last play, say 4 boat lengths out. And then, this guy has a choice. He's maybe not quite making it. And they're going to have to, so he's going to maybe be struggling to pinch. So he's going slow. And this is back to the target overstand. I'm going to have to overstand a little, but I'm only doing it for 4 boat lengths. So I don't really mind. But I always am thinking about making this play before I get to the 3 boat lane zone. The other problem with the 3 boat lane zone is once you're in it, even if suppose this guy's pretty overstood, this guy's really low, and there's another one that's coming in. Well, here I still might be able to bob and weave. Once you get here, everybody's converging, right? Like it's really crowded and there's less room to maneuver because everybody's just funneling into that. So I think once you get here, it gets super risky and you could end up ducking the whole fleet before you know it. I've been there.
Which is ultimately, as the certain J70 worlds played out, was probably a better move. But anyway, that's for another day. Okay, so exiting before, let's just sort of quickly in this long course right side play. This could probably go on for hours, but long course, the first move out of this mark then, presumably.
I want you to around the mark.
Yeah, well, around the mark, it's a right side favored course.
Right, if it's right downwind also, like, suppose you're in an asymmetrical shoot boat and you really reach over that side, a lot more wind.
Yep.
Something like that. I think once you get here, whether you're on the short course or the long course. So this, to me, looks very similar, whether you're long course or short. Once you get here, I think it's a very similar scenario either way. Doesn't matter how you got to 4 boat lanes from the mark, whether you sailed for 10 minutes to get there or 2, it's still the same kind of end game. But I think either way, once you get here and you're bobbing and weaving, you can't be thinking about, which way do I want to go downwind? Like as you're trying to get in here, right? So, we talk about the 20%, right? Up the beat. Well, if it's 10-minute beat at 8 minutes, somewhere down here, I better be saying, hey, I think I want to do a jibe set. I want to exit the top mark on port tack. And the team's ready to go. So, often when you do this, there's an offset, especially if it's a big fleet, long course. You're thinking about how you're going to get out of this mark. And what I don't want to be doing, if I'm trying to exit and do a jibe set, I don't want to be, if I want to go do a straight set, I don't want to be augured out. Like I want to be able to hold my lane, right? And if I want to jibe, I might actually go a little shy of the mark, or at least get in line. I don't want to be stuck here, right? If I want to do a jibe set, that's not going to work. So I'm thinking about that when I'm setting up for the weather mark, is how the heck am I going to get out of here so I can actually jibe? So I might work really hard to might even slow down and say, no room, make sure nobody sticks their bow in there. Really try to get in line, get my bow down so that when I get here, I have the option to jibe. If I want to continue, I'll kind of do the opposite, right? I don't mind. I might do a little higher target overstand and stay a little higher. So I'm already in this lane up here. I need to get there anyway because I really want to continue. I don't mind being up here just a little bit. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And 3.0, as you set up high, anticipating that you want to sort of dive down, eventually jibe, how do you make sure that blue boat doesn't come in and
well, no, I'm setting up low so that I can jibe. It's a harder maneuver, but I'm doing that so that blue doesn't. I'm defending, it's longer than that, right? It's probably okay. But if I want to jibe, I might slow down, but I don't want to slow down so much and let him get in it. I might even dive down and get here. So it's really clear that he can't. That's the worst case scenarios. All of a sudden, right before the 3-boat lane zone here, they get the bow in there and you're like riding your bow, your wave, and you're like, I'm stuck. So I'll work really hard to get down and communicate with this guy that they had no room.
So that's kind of probably very important. Like for a lot on keel boats, that's the responsibility of the helmsman to really, as all the action is happening on the front of the boat with getting the kite up and yada yada, that priority has to go on the helmsman to make sure that he's looking back and defending that as he would a hole on the starting line.
Correct. So a really good subject for another day is whose responsibility, who's tactician when.
Right.
And, somewhere right around here, the tactician is handed over the tactics to me because they can't, they tell me what they want to do. We want to exit. We want to do a jibe set. You want to get inside, a bunch of starboard boats coming. And then they say the words, it's yours. And I say, I got it. And then they start thinking about the boat handling, and it's up to me to get there and make that all happen, including communicating at that point here. You have no room. That thing where I go to the back of the boat and I might even spin the boat a little bit and say, we're at 3-boat lane zone. There's no overlap. That is totally on me as a driver as opposed to the tactician.
Might mean a great tip for those helmsmen and skippers out there who love to sort of keep their eyes of what's happening at the front of the boat. That's not the time to look at or yell to hoist.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's the spinnaker. Whatever's happening with the spinnaker is you're not going to help them. They're on their own, but then you got to do your job. That is a really good topic for another broadcast someday.
Okay, that's a podcast.
We'll call it. Whose job is it anyway?
All right, so let's take us back to the start. We've conquered the right. Let's look at the left play.
Yeah. So left is really interesting in a short course. So if in a short course, I don't mind starting like halfway down the line. If you kind of break the line into quarters, I kind of like the bottom.
Yeah, let's move your line up in screen there. Yeah.
Just a little bit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. Now we can see a start.
So I don't want to win the pin because the belay line comes so quickly. You could really get leveraged out there. One of my favorite things is if that's true, is if the boat's a little favored, then I don't mind starting up a little bit, kind of get to the left by being at the right end. Then you get to choose when you come back. And that's really what we're talking about here. If you start too far down, you could really get stuck out here. Even if you're faster, you don't have enough time. You get a good start and go fast. You still may not be able to cross everybody. Right? So giving yourself a little bit of room here, let this be the one that's the last attack. So that's the first part. I kind of start. Whereas if it's a really long course, I don't mind kind of doubling down and, going as far as I need to. If it's a little favored, I don't mind being a little closer. because I'm hoping I get a good start and can really auger in for a long time. And but then the interesting part comes back where, suppose you start here and you get a great start and left really is favored and you can cross. I don't mind going right to ley line, even though the 3 boat lane zone's here. If I can cross this group, I'm probably winning. All's good.
Mm-hmm.
The more realistic scenario is I'm not winning, right? And there's somebody that's got me. And, I think this is one of the hardest things is they're thinking the same thing. Whoever's winning, and if the left's favored, they're going to want to go almost to ley line. And that's kind of that short course mentality. It's so short anyway, you're going to be there in a minute, might as well go all the way. So I'm making a decision right about now, let's say that I want to tack out a little bit early. Because what I can't afford to do is have this guy in the ley line. I have to wait for them. And now I'm overstood. So I've sailed extra distance. And now, people that have come here and stuff. And now somebody's going to be on starboard when I get there. And life's going to be really bad. So what I'm trying to do is decide when's the best time. And my default is thinking that I'm going to have to tack early, duck it, and go. And I want to do it just early enough that people aren't going to be tempted to tack on me. They're free. They want to go to the left corner. Then let them go. But if I go too close to ley line, this guy may choose to tack there, and then I'm screwed.
Yeah.
So there's sort of this magic distance away of, 5 to 10 boat lanes from the ley line that I try to take back and be free. And it's interesting. You leave everybody here, and if nobody tacks on you, you're kind of second, right? You're right there. But if you get into this group out here and get stuck, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So this is hard to do. Like maybe you can barely not cross, right? And you're like, you're a really big duck. And you got to do it. You got to give it up. So.
Yeah, that's your safe early exit, basically, to open up your options. Yeah.
Safe early exit to open your option.
Yeah.
And if it's a long course, so let's shrink this down, call this 10 minutes again. And not to scale, our boats are still the same size, but on a big scale, I'm thinking the same thing. After the 5 minutes, as I get, the 40%, when I'm almost to ley line, I'm thinking, am I going to extend all the way kind of to ley line? And I tell you, if you're not like in the top 3, you don't want to do that. Instead, you kind of do this distance away that's, say, 10 boat lengths or 15 boat lengths, that range, 10 to 15. That's magically below this ley line. That even if there's a bunch of boats here, 10 boat lengths or so, and they're pretty far ahead of you, even though you think you're in the wind shadow, 10 boat lengths away, you're not. And one of my favorite things to do here is it's a little like the upwind on the starboard ley line. Like my default is bow to bow. But sometimes if I'm a little bit further behind, I don't mind being here. And the reason is nobody's going to come and tack there. Like this wind shadow is here. You want to be just behind this guy's wind shadow, right? So like if you tack in a spot where you think you're in their wind shadow, but you're really 10 boat lengths away, nobody's going to tack there. So it's kind of like this way out of the left corner if you're not winning. So it's kind of a subtle way to do it.
Yeah, building yourself
a default
buffer.
Is bow to bow, whether I'm the starboard or port.
All right, cool. Let's shrink the course down.
Yeah, so well, we did, right? So we did the left side favored. We wanted to kind of leave back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what's left? The middle of the course, right?
Right.
So if you shrink down the middle of the course, I think if it's just really shifty and you're going to get a couple shifts, you can play the middle of the course. You're on some lake, some blustery day, winds off the land, and then you just play a couple shifts, and it can be highly effective, especially if the shifts are that quick. They're probably really big too. So it's worth just, you just basically auto attack whenever you get a shift. Boom, you go up the course, you sail less distance, life is good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always have a theory when it's shifty like that, if I'm not sort of pointed near the mark, like if I can't see it right in front of me, I'm on the wrong tack, right? Like I don't even use a compass, right? But if it's the oscillating shifts, as we mentioned before, in the short course, you may never get a chance to take advantage of it. And instead of it becomes a go right or go left scenario just by default, because you can't get a shift in. So it really looks the same after that.
And that's all easy in the absence of other boats. But what's the balance of the knee-jerk reaction of attacking on the shifts, but then attacking yourself into more chaos? I mean, how do you sort of balance that decision in the moment?
So let's take the long course scenario. I think you handle them very different based on the size of the shift. So if it's 5-degree shifts, nice sea breeze every 2 minutes, you're just going to go for a couple of minutes. You're going to get a little header. You're going to go. You're going to get a little header. You're going to go. A little header. You're going to go. Whatever, right? So you attack 4 to 6 times on the beat or something, right? Perfect. But when you do this, because they're small shifts, clean air really, really matters. So I might not, if there's a boat right above me and they take, I might wait for them to take the shift first and make sure I have a nice clean lane, right? Oh, I'm green, right? So I take a nice clean lane. I'm looking for clean air. So I think clean air matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if it's really crazy shifts, whether it's a long course or a short, if you get 20-degree shifts, we did an episode on this, right? Like you just got to go. And I don't care if this boat already tacked on that shift. They got it first. I'm here. I get this gigantic shift. I'm just going to tack right in their dirty air. I'm heading 20 degrees higher than I would have on the other tack. If I kept going, that's a 40-degree swing. There's kind of no amount this person can slow me down that's worth that. So I don't mind sitting in dirt and making that happen if it's really shifty. So I got to do that balance like ahead of time. Are the shifts so big that I don't mind sitting in dirty air? Yes, then I'll just sit in dirty air.
Which brings up another question that, you might find yourself in that position and someone say, well, just foot off, give yourself some space. How much do you lose by footing off into a bigger lane versus just holding?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I think the answer is it's okay to foot off a little bit, right? Like if this is the dirtier zone, right? Something like that. And you wanted to attack right here, there's nothing wrong with footing off just a little bit to kind of, go a little lower and kind of get out of it. I don't mind that. Because what's happening is, they're gigantic shifts, right? So you're going this way, then you're going this way. So you're really like this, right? Now, if you're on this shift. But let's face it, you can, there's this theory you want to foot to a shift anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You put your bow down a little bit. Now you get to this shift first. And now maybe you're tacking right before this guy. And maybe you've made some gains. What you don't want to do is pinch out of here. Because you're already on a lift and you pinch through the lift, try to stay above the dirt. Then when the shift comes, they get it first. They're here. They've just made major gains on you. Mm-hmm. So I think footing out of the shift, out of a lift is okay. Pinching out of a lift is not okay.
One last final scenario. Let's say you're back on the long course. Is it better to foot into a more open lane or clearing tack?
Yeah, so I think the answer is that Depends on how important it is to go left. For example, suppose it's a go left scenario. The same thing would go for go right, like whatever, if that's the major plan, whatever it is, like how important it is to get that way. And so I always have, okay, we want to go left. And then we have another discussion after that. It's like, how badly do we want to get there? And there's a plan B scenario. Like if I don't get the perfect start in that unlikely scenario, it's reality, right? So my plan B is I have in my head already ahead of time, or we as a team have already. One is we just go left no matter what. I don't care if you're in dirty air, no matter what. Just keep going. It's rare, but it happens. I've done that before where it worked. The second is you're gonna double tack. You're gonna clear, go left and clear air. And that I think you got to be opportunistic on. So you can say, if this is us and you get a kind of a compromised start and there's nobody below this guy, or if there's a big gap, I very well may be, boom, pop through, right? Go reach through that person. That's a pretty powerful move. Or maybe there's a bunch of boats here, but there's a little gap above, and I could do a quick double tack or duck somebody in tack. I see a lane above me. So that's a game time decision to pace on the scenario. Go left in clean air. So I'm either going to do a tack, two tack, or we call it the reach through. And this is, I think, something that people don't utilize enough. There we go. There's another topic for us. And then there's a third plan B, which is go right. Like we're like, I think we kind of gonna go left, but it's pretty open. It doesn't really matter, and speed really matters. Just get on port. You don't have a great start. Bobbing your weave through on port. Once you get a clear lane, you're like, I'm in a clear lane going fast. I'm just going to keep going. Mm. But I think the key here is if you don't make this plan B before the start, this is really hard to do in the emotion of the moment when you kind of screwed up your start and you're right here. What do you do? What are you going to do? You're going to suck it up? You're going to clear? Or are you just going to get on the other tack and not worry about it?
Easy enough. So, okay, that's my final lasting question, I think. And it relates to what happens down in these J70 fleets a lot, that how do the top guys and the pros like you come out of a bad start, knowing that they have this long course? What do you think is the one thing that gets them right back into the mix?
I think it's, waiting, like suppose you get this not great start. It's deciding right away, like there's one moment here I can do this, or wow, there's a really cool opportunity to do this, or duck. And the other, sometimes my tactician will say, hang on as long as you can, just concentrate, hang here. You're not going to survive here forever, but if you can last 30 seconds, it's going to clear out. We're going to have a better option. And I think that's what the pros do really well. They decide, boom, I got to take this opportunity I see right now, or it's a really bad scenario if I get out now, but they're really good at going high and slow for just long enough, and they only bleed a little bit, and then they finally see a fat lane and boom, and they're going fast.
Yeah, next thing you know, they're in front of you again. Damn it.
Right, saying they're going. But that's the key. It's sort of like knowing when to be patient and wait your turn, and knowing when and being able to execute the perfect tack to cross that one guy, get yourself a clear lane that's not so bad,
Perfect. All right. Well, I think I'm smart enough now to sail some short courses at home and go play in Florida in the winter. So all good stuff. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate all the tips.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.